Good afternoon to everybody from Ottawa and from Montreal. I hope that this webinar will highlight some of the effects of the pandemic on young children's behavior and emotion. Today's topic is emotional expression.
So today we're focusing a little bit more on the emotion world, that big world about emotions that I'm saying, that big world, because as you know, there's so many information about emotions, and if you just look at icons on the web, there are thousands of icons about emotion, but yet it's not something that we, managing emotion, be feeling comfortable to express emotion is something that as adults it's still struggling at sometimes. So today we're going to go a little bit broader and really address what we call emotional competence as a whole. So today we are going to be focusing a little bit more on emotion related to stress and anxiety, although we are for sure looking for those strategies that can help our children and the children we work with to manage anger. So from the very start, the picture that we have chosen to talk about emotional competence is, a picture of joy. And I guess that this picture we like a lot because all the elements related to how children feel comfortable about expressing emotion, because we know some children, they don't feel that comfortable about expressing their emotions, but then all the support that is needed behind it. So that parent, that very supporting parent, and organizing something fun around it. So let's have fun also ourselves. So let's have a quick look at some very actual emotions. So I was saying that we have chosen to focus a little bit more around stress and anxiety. So, there's definition of, fear, stress, and anxiety, and it's not that important again to make the difference. But then when we talk about fear, we really talk about that specific emotion that arises when we feel threatened. So we say it's an healthy emotion. Well, all emotions are healthy and natural. I guess it's the immediate response we want to be focusing when we talk about fear. The stress, and it's so well documented, as you know, but is known as the normal reaction of our body to a threat. So would it be a real threat or an imagined one? The brain doesn't make the difference, is not discriminating, and I guess the same reaction of our body comes and arouses from just the thought of a danger than being very facing a danger. So it's really all related to the hormones secretion and all those reactions happening in our body. That stress feeling. Anxiety is more known as the emotional state caused by stress, but not only by stress, but if we want to link together fear, stress, and anxiety, I guess this comes from that stress and that reactions that we have. When the feeling of being threatened stays way beyond the threat. So this is the main difference between the immediate fear and anxiety. It's something that stays way after the danger or the imagination of a danger has gone. And we say it becomes problematic when the emotional response is disappropriate to this situation. Well, let us be clear, anxiety is totally normal, and anxiety is what helps us to be adjusted in our peer group. As a child, adjusted to our work environment, you need to be more observing of the rules and what can I do and what is permitted and not. So anxiety is something we need to be adapted. When it becomes problematic for children when anxiety takes so much place in a child routine that it doesn't play anymore, that is not available to any activities we may propose. So fear is, while the anxiety is something problematic and comes from, evaluation of a certain period of time where the child is not functioning as usual. So we know for sure, and it has been surveyed, that parents right now are concerned about anxiety issues. And anxiety, although it may be something very sudden happening and new for some parents, we are in a situation that needs a lot of adaptation, and it's new, and some children tend to have more difficulty adjusting to new things. It's related to anxiety also. But so it's not surprising to see those behaviors where a child refuses to play, refuses to go out. We know for sure that some parents don't feel comfortable to let their children go out, and there's something around it. But again, we need at least 3 months of those behaviors to be assessed in different environments of the child to talk about is it problematic or not. Why it matters. So, of course, the purpose of all this is we have talked about self-regulation last week, and we're going to talk about social competence and pro-social skills and peer relations in the webinars to come. But emotional competence really predicts those things. So it's important, it's related to entry to school, a successful entry to school. It's related to be accepted by peers, to be happy in my environment. So working on the emotions, emotional competence is something very important to support children in their development and being prepared to go to school. As an example, it is known to be a protective factor against stressors and to prevent anxiety and depression. And emotional competence promotes empathy, pro-social skills, and adapted solving problem strategies. So what it is really, and you all know about this, but when we talk about emotional competence, we really talk about 3 big components. And sometimes we have more one in mind, the third one being the emotions regulation component. But then when we talk about is that child, how can we support the emotion expressions and the emotion regulation? Well, it starts with supporting their understanding about emotions. So what is called understanding emotion is the ability to identify how we feel and how others feel. And I just wrote the importance of mimicking, and we'll be back to that a little bit later in the presentation. But the children, they really need to be observing adults and models in their environment, expressing emotions and saying to them, look at my face, I'm angry now, look at my eyes, look at my mouth, you listen to my voice. We know now that in order for children to understand and for their brain to really understand what is this emotion, children will be mimicking the emotion they see in others' faces, in their parents' faces, the educators' faces. So, and mimicking is often not unconscious, but we know now there's a connection between our facial expression and the pathway to our brain. And sometimes you're going to see a bit later. It's not that we may have some tricks that challenge that connection between the facial expression and the brain. There's literature on autistic children that express emotion differently, and their facial features are different when exposed to emotions. And it's supposed also it is documented that it might be related to the fact that their brain doesn't receive the good information about what this emotion is all about. So expressing emotion, it seems so easy, of course. It's important to encourage expression of emotions. But encouraging the expression of joy is something we do a lot. And the babies, this is the first emotion they understand. So this means people are expressing it, and they mimic it, and they get to understand. And when you show them pictures of joy, this is the first emotion really they understand. But then again, for a child to be expressing emotion, he needs to be allowed to. And have the space to do it. So in some period like this one that we're living right now, maybe the expression of emotion is not something that parents say, okay, let's have time. I see you have a temper tantrum now. You're angry. Okay, let's have time to manage that. We might think that those strategies for parents are less available these days. But a child, needs to feel that he's allowed to. It's not only that he has the space to, that parents encourages, he needs to give himself permission. and feel that it's no shame to express emotions. So there's a lot of things that we do in model without, really thinking about it, but maybe sometimes children, they feel that the emotion might be something not that good to express. And we know for sure that toddlers as young as 18 months and 2 years old, they tend to hide their emotions when they express it. So, we're not saying that parents are saying don't express your emotion, but there's something to think about this. How come a 2-year-old, when we see are you angry, hides and say no? There's a lot of things around it, of course, but still expression of emotion, you need to understand that there's no punishment coming with the fact that I'm expressing something. And of course, emotion regulation is all about modifying how I feel to go back to the state of being calm, and it's related to self-regulation. Just before we pursue, I wrote, let's not forget, all those skills are only emerging during early childhood. So we need to be having, adjusted expectations. And as I was saying, even though I have the age I have, and I won't tell you my age, it's not because I know those emotions and I'm allowed to that I really express them the wrong way and I regulate myself all the time. That's not true. If you ask my husband and kids, they will tell you. So of course, a lot of things affect the emotional competence. We know about temperament, cognitive development as a whole, and of course, factors from the environment, immediate environment. So temperament, just a few, I won't go maybe all around all those things, but we know for sure that, children all, they are born differently. And in terms of temperament, we know that we have children who are more explosive than others from the very beginning. And it's not a problem. It's only, sometimes related to how, their brain is developed at the time that he comes to this world. But it's not a problem, being very reactive. But what it means that is parents, they should be be supported to make sure that they are providing the common support, as warmth around those babies, so they will slowly develop the self-regulation around those emotional to inhibit. So it's related to executive function, as we discussed last week. But then we know there are individual differences involved in the emotional competence. We know for sure that children who tend to be more addressing new situation with joy tend to have a better emotional competence. And we know that temperament influences humor, tendency to avoid new situations. So I may be in that situation where all that's new, I don't want to be addressing as a child. Frustration, a state of sadness, all related to temperament. And also, we know that temperament may interfere with the ability to interpret events, like having hostile intentions, thinking that others, they really wanted to make me sad or mad. So we can see those very impulsive children. Sometimes feeling more, having more sense of persecution, and always thinking that others want to harm them. So it's something about cognitive development that is related to temperament, but we know that it may make some children, in the differences, more reactive than others. So cognitive development as a whole is known to impact the emotional competence by the language development. Of course, when the language is more there and accessible for children, we see that they express things differently, and they use it in a way that it can help them be understood by their parents and educators. But of course, we're thinking about language impairment. For some child, this is an issue related to emotion. So the ability to consider the point of views of others is something that helps, to modulate the expression of emotion, and also to understand the mental state of others. And as soon as again, toddlers at 2 years of age, they enter that understanding that I feel things and I get that others feel things too. So in the environment, very well documented, the attachment bond. As a child develop, more secure attachment or insecure influences the way he will be living with his emotions. Parental practice, so warm, positive discipline are associated with less reactive reactions, less reactivity in children. And it's related to the quality of self-regulation again. Again, at the opposite, we know that hostile parental practices create more reactiveness and parent-child conflicts. Adult as models, we're going to talk about it on the strategies in a few minutes. But again, it's a good thing for children to have access to models who show how they cope with their own emotions. What can be done? The first thing that comes in the literature and that we all know about, and supporting the attachment theory, offer, support parents and make sure that they know how those cuddling they do, and the fact that they offer comfort and reassure quickly when they see distress is the first thing and the most important thing to do for children to live with emotions more peacefully. Provide access to comfort objects. This is documented, that little blanket, but sometimes in our early childhood education centers, daycare centers, it's not that easy to manage, but if we want the children to develop some kind of autonomy around regulating their emotions, it's a very, very good thing. So to see how we can manage, and of course, if a child is allowed to take his blanket, all the children should have the same right, but we need that very concrete access to objects that can comfort us, but first, of course, the adults. Be a model as an adult. And again, it's not that easy because when I was saying earlier that children, they tend to hide their emotion, well, guess what? There are studies showing that parents and educators and teachers, when we experience emotions and we're in front of a group of children where we're not that comfortable, and sometimes maybe we, like I used to do and do with my own children, when they say, "Mom, are you angry?" No, I'm just tired, right? And I'm denying it. Well, this is, all about my life now, but still, being a model is also to say, well, yeah, okay, I will talk to you in a few minutes because, yes, I am angry. It's not about explaining the whys and the reasons. It's just, yes. And as a parent and also as educators, try to see how, yes, they see it, the mimic, remember the mimic, and the facial expression is so important in the understanding of emotions. So if they see things and you say, yes, this is joy, this is, sadness, this is being angry, well, I understand it a little bit more. And of course, play the game and show this how you manage and how you deal with those emotions, and say, I'm going to take a deep breath, I'm going to change rooms for a minute because I need to calm down. We know how modeling is important in order for children to use those strategies. Oh yes, we should stay calm. But not that easy when the temper tantrums, they can be so impressive. But of course, so it means that when we don't feel calm, we should take that minute to calm down before trying to calm down our children. Avoid blaming the expression of emotions. Of course, if a child is so angry that he hurt someone, you want to stop that gesture. But emotion itself, it should be allowed. I just want to give you the example of my mother-in-law. She had 6 boys, oh boy, and she is not that comfortable with the expression of sadness. When my children, she was taking care of them, and babysitting for us. You know, when a child would hurt and cry, she would say, no, it will pass. It's not, you'll be okay. And, you know, you're tired. Oh, no, it's not broken. It's not broken. Let's change, you know, let's change something. Let's change our minds and do something nice. And, you know, changing the mind is a very good strategy, right? We don't want children to stay in that emotion, but we know that we should allow a little bit more time about just the expression to happen. And might it be a few seconds? It's not easy, and we need to stay calm around it. But we know that the expression, you know, we will be able to tame what emotion is all about if we are allowed to express it a little bit more. So my mother-in-law has no idea that I'm talking about her today. Oh, this my, maybe you know Tim Allen and the film Christmas with the Franks, which is one of my favorite of all times of Christmas movies. I don't know if you know that scene, but he just went and received some Botox injection before going to a trip, and it's a very, very funny scene because, you know, he cannot eat anything, he cannot drink anything. But guess what? There are studies about Botox, the influence of Botox on the perception of emotion in our brains. And it's all about, you know, what Botox does really. It really blocks the muscle movement in our face. And it seems that we need those movements for our brain to understand. So I guess my message here is, ladies and gentlemen, think twice. Try to get Botox, but then again, the importance of modeling and exaggerating, you know, how I feel and look at my face. So the mimic happens, so the brain understands it more. It's just a little funny thing, I thought. And of course, we talked about this again, the importance of stories. Read well, and of course, there are tons of books about temper tantrums and emotions. But then our choices should be around, you know, those books who not only show the emotions, but are very clear about, you know, the regulation strategies that were used, and and when we read those books, there's a good strategy to use is to make sure that we talk about how the emotions are expressed in the different characters, for the different characters. So look at the bear, he's being very angry, and look what he's doing. And look at the rabbit, what he does, and look at this. So, you know, to show children that there are many, there are different ways to express emotions. But then again, in the same situation, how come the bear seems sad and the rabbit seems angry? And, you know, it opens up some, you know, we're thinking about the cognitive development and, you know, the whole world of emotions. So if, you know, I'm a child and I always think that others want to threaten me or want me bad, and, you know, I always think that people are angry. But it's good to hear that, you know, and I'm reading a book with a group and saying, you know, do you think that the bear is angry? And a child will say yes, and the other will say no. And this confronts, you know, those very, very quick and first ideas and impulsivity that children have. So it's a good way to use those moments to make some links with the emotion. Of course, the cause, what caused it, and on the solutions, very important. Pretend play. We know that, of course, pretend play is, well, it's play. It's about, you know, having fun with my friend, and this is very important. But it allows us to act out some emotions, and it's related to emotional security, to be able to do so. Of course, it helps to see the consequences if, you know, my horse, you know, hits a little bit too hard on the end of my friend. The game will stop. So I learn things, of course, but I need to be able to do that and understand that in that context, I learn, in fact, to tame emotions, and it's very powerful. So again, the importance of play is back. So I guess that's it from my part. Back to you, Cindy.
Well, thank you so much, Isabelle. That was really insightful and helpful information. I'm sure we agree, and a really good connect to last week's webinar as well. If you would like to know more about more information on similar topics, please check out the childencyclopedia.com link, which is the encyclopedia on early childhood development, and also our website at familiescanada.ca, So to open the discussion, I would like to ask Callie, our CEO and President from Families Canada, to give us your perspectives and thoughts on this.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. We're really honored that you are making time in your day for something like this that we are doing with our expert partner, Isabelle, and the Center of Excellence for Early Child Development, and drawing on their encyclopedia for early child development. We're really interested in your comments and even in ideas for future sessions. And of course, do have a look at our resources, which are on our website or on the social media channels and our YouTube that Families Canada has. I would like to sort of start off the conversation with respect to questions. And I wondered, Isabelle, is it a good idea to force, or maybe not force is the too strong word, to press a child who is very anxious into attending an event or participating in an activity, or should you back away from doing that?
I guess our natural tendency, and my older son, he I was the supposedly expert of early childhood development, and when we went to the park, he was the only one not playing with others, right? So he refused, and he was wanted to be with me, and my first reaction was to push him away. Go, Emile. There's no problem. Go with your friends. Do like others. Show that I'm a good mother, right? But then the more, and it's just an example that, of course, our reaction is to do that. But what we should do, and what I should have read and done, is, to allow him that space where, okay, you're not ready yet. It's all about the balance of, helping him, because yes, we don't want Emile to be avoiding always those situations, because we know the anxiety level will go up. But then again, if you force him too much and, being very, very pushy about it, well, we know that the anxiety the levels will be so high that you won't be able to play for the whole hour with your friends. But then if you allow that 5 minutes and just say, no drama about it, I stay calm. This is the slide said, stay calm. Okay, I stay calm. I try to ignore it, even though I'm all, upset about it. And but then in a few minutes, it's my responsibility to say to Emile, you know what, Emile, you're looking at the playground and your friends, and I think you want to go. We're going to go together. Being supportive, guiding him. So it's not to force, but it's to invite, to respect the rhythm. And this is not, it's on the books, it's very, very easy, that limit and that balance. But then allow ourselves and allow him to just be in that state. And then what we see, slowly he might go with the friends. It's not magical, but then he's just beneath the friends, and he's not asking, to play with them, and he's not introducing himself because he's so timid and anxiety and anxious.
There's another one that I guess the notion is a bit controversial, but I'm interested in your point of view, and that is allowing a really worked up, angry child who's having a temper tantrum, or maybe a child that that has a lot of temper tantrums, to have some physical mechanism that's safe to work it out. Some kind of a punching bag or something that they can use to work out their frustration, other than their sibling or something less appropriate.
Good question, Kelly. Of course, it's all, it's funny because we want them to express things, but then again, we want them to be able to self-control, right? To develop more self-control and to stop themselves. So if you look at it very in a neutral way, the punching bag, or the caution that you give a child to let go of some of the steam is certainly a good strategy. So it allows some children to let the steam out, but not all children need that, right? We use those kind of tools for some specific children who don't allow themselves at all, right? And you want them to bring it out. But if you look at it for other children and in the other's perspective, you want children to express with words eventually, and maybe in different ways. But we want to stop those gestures of punching. So if you look at it through a self-control development perspective, it doesn't make much sense, right, to allow for it's not that will bring, you know, the children to calm down or to learn to calm down. So the use of punching bag is not something that we suggest for, you know, in a classroom. We more use this in an individual answer to some children. But then allowing children to, run, and you're angry, it's okay, let it out, is what we want, because we want to express, we want to allow them to express. But do we need to express and leave the punching happening? This is a question, of course, that we all need to see how we feel about it. But there's a confusion sometimes about the use of those things, because we think it might, how can a child learn to stop his behavior, to inhibit his behavior, if it always is allowed to punch, right? So it depends on the objective. Do we want to support self-control, or do we want to bring a child that doesn't easily express things to express it, the use of those things?
Yes, I was going to ask the question regarding exploring the connection between anxiety and stress in children and how that manifests in an aggressive behavior. Are we going to explore this in the next session, pro-social behavior, or, you know, because we are initially talking today about stress and anxiety, and sometimes that manifests in the child being withdrawn. Sometimes it manifests in the child perceiving a threat that it may not be there, but it shows as a physically very aggressive behavior. And this is one of the challenges that I find, especially in large groups, when you are concerned for the safety of the whole group, you know, how to manage those things. Because I know that whatever emotion the child is expressing, whether it's aggressive or not, it comes from a place of a need to be fulfilled. But I'm really struggling, you know, how do you meet those challenges within the large group context?
Yes, we did not address the aggressive behaviors today, but they are so linked: anxiety, stress, and what triggers the aggressive behavior. So I'm totally happy to address that a little bit more. Yes, because with the pro-social skills, what it is all about and how it develops, we can address that, and also with the peer relations. But it's true that today we focused a little bit more on the more inhibited, behaviors. And how to bring some children to go and, you know, to develop more self-confidence. But then we know that anxiety and aggressive behaviors are good friends sometimes, and how to address it. And we may observe those aggressive behaviors a little bit more these days based on this. So thank you for your question, and I take you on that. We will address it a little bit more next time.
I just wanted to make one comment. Part of my job is to advocate for families who have children with special needs. And the word autistic was used during the presentation. And for me, that's like nails on a chalkboard. Just to remind everyone to try and use people first language. So it's a child who has autism, and try and break that stigma about autistic as a characteristic. That's just my little piece I wanted to share.
Thank you, Candice. And I'm sorry if, you know, I know in English the words I use are not the good ones often, but of course we take children as a whole, you know, or a human being. And thank you for your comment. It's important. And thank you for advocating for children.
Good feedback, and we'll try to keep that in mind as well. We do work with organizations that are supporting families with people with disabilities, so that's something that we definitely will be keeping in mind. Isabelle, any final points before I close the discussion?
Well, just to thank you all again, and it's for me, it's a very fun moment in my week to be able to share. And we will be, if you have questions afterwards, you can write them, and we'll be happy to answer it and ask others to find the good answer if we don't have it. So thank you so much.